Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a Transform Your Birth podcast. Today with me, we have the lovely Emily. Now, Emily was a midwife and she chose to have a home birth. So this will be another beautiful and interesting story to delve into. Hi, Emily. Welcome, darling. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, tell us, Em, when you were pregnant, how are you feeling about having a baby, particularly as a midwife, because that brings in another level of mindset that can come with birth. And what did you do to prepare?
Yeah, I think it took us a while to conceive, and during that time I did spend a lot of time thinking about how I feel about being pregnant, working as a midwife, especially working in, like, specifically in the birthing suite, so sort of being exposed to the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Yeah.
And I was feeling quite anxious and trying to think about what model of care I would use. And I suppose a lot of midwives do sort of gravitate towards like the continuity of care models. And so I thought that would be, I think for a lot of my time working as a midwife, I thought that's what I would want to do. And then we went through COVID and sort of that space changed during that time. And so I had to sort of reset my thought process about, okay, well, that space looks a bit different. Would I still want to, say, birth with a continuity of care midwife, but say in the birthing suite with colleagues around? Would I want to birth at a different hospital? Would you want to have that power of knowing those people if anything went wrong? And so that it was a really tricky space to navigate. And then once COVID hit, it sort of just helped me make up my mind. I had a few colleagues that had a home birth, and I sort of just went, I think that's what I want. I think my partner's not big into the hospital.
Yeah.
He has been, he's just one of those people, if he hurts himself, he just deals with it and goes on with life. And I have to pull him by his ear to get to the hospital. So I knew that space probably wasn't going to be the best space for him either. I thought he would thrive better being at home and being comfortable. And I knew that I'd potentially want my people around me. And so with even though the birthing space after COVID started to return to normal, there was still some restrictions on new visitors and having, birth photography and all that, which was important to me. So home birth just seemed like the right option for me. And
can I just ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Were you aware also, particularly being a midwife and giving birth in a place where you might know the people professionally that are around you, did you feel like home birth was preferred also from a place of intimacy and privacy? Was that a factor as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there was a part of me that thought if things were going well, you certainly wouldn't want to be surrounded by people you knew, maybe just your midwife. It was sort of a catch-22, because then you sort of think, well, if I needed an emergency procedure, if I needed something, I know this obstetric doctor really well, and I've seen what they can do. And so it was kind of wanting to know those people in that scenario, but not wanting to know them if things were going well. You didn't necessarily want them in your space. So it was, it was hard. I can't say 100% that I would have wanted people I knew around. But I also thought if I needed them, it would be nice to know them as well.
Of course, which highlights the relationship of knowing your carers can make a really big difference. But it also highlights the importance of privacy and women feeling safe and protected in the space that they're in. So knowing, the people who are going to be a part of your birth could also work against you as well. It's an interesting challenge that midwives often have. So you and your partner decided to have a home birth. How did you feel you needed to prepare for that? Because that's taking on more responsibility, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think then I did start to get a bit of fear around labour and birth, because I know what I know, and I've seen what I've seen, and you can't unknow it and you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And I had sort of two brains. I had my sensible brain that goes, well, I know things can go really well and really easily, but that, that midwife brain would take over quite often. And I think, unfortunately for my partner, you don't always bring home the good stories when you've had a rough day, when you've seen something bad. You sort of just come home and unpile it a bit. And so his idea of labour and birth, I think, was also a bit tainted with bad. And so the idea of birthing at home, I think, was really scary for him. And it took him a really long time. I think even still going into the labour and birth, he still had a bit of fear around what if this happens, what if this happens. So it took him a lot longer to prepare, I think, than it took me. Certainly at the beginning it was hard, and then it just came a point in the pregnancy, and I'm sure we'll talk about all the things that I did to prepare, but I started doing those things, and once I did, it felt right, and it felt like it was definitely what I wanted. And I just had to work on all those little things that I could do to prepare myself and keep in the good headspace. And stay in that headspace.
So you landed squarely into home birth is definitely the way we want to go.
Yeah, met with a home birth midwife really early, and she really did put my mind at ease. Even being a midwife, I think I thought I'd have more knowledge around what you would do at home if this happens, what you do if this happens, but I didn't. I had lots of sort of gaps there in my knowledge, and so just meeting with the home birthing midwife really early on, she closed those gaps and really made me feel like, it's, and at that she was the right person for me. She just was really easygoing about everything, and every time we walked away from an appointment, I just felt like, oh yeah, it's all good. Like, she's very similar to my partner in that respect. They're both very like, it'll be fine.
Which obviously worked for you, and it can help you to cultivate that confidence in your decision making. And because it is a big decision, and a lot of people question why women would choose to birth at home, but for some women that's where they feel safest. And plus you're creating the perfect conditions for labour to unfold in the way the body's designed to birth. We're the only animal that moves in labour. And just the whole process of transferring to a hospital, when you're in a well-established labour, in itself is disturbing the process. So it's really important we retain those choices for women to be able to birth at home if they choose to, because that is truly where you see undisturbed birth.
Yeah, and I think that just became unfolded as I learned more and more about what I wanted with my labour and birth and prepared for my labour and birth, that importance of being at home. It wasn't there at the beginning, but the more that I went through the process, it made me just even more like, yes, this is definitely the right decision, because all that learnings just points out all those, like you were saying, all those good things that home birth can bring.
Yeah, beautiful. So how did you prepare?
So initially I didn't do a lot. We booked in with you for your weekend course, your 2-day course. And just sort of made that the priority. And then as things started to sort of progress in the pregnancy, spoke to other midwives, spoke to a home birthing midwife, and I was reading just random sort of books, texts, things that my sister had passed on or other people had passed on, but in particular, one of the midwives that was actually there for my home births, she had been attending some home births, and she gave me her copy of the Ina May Gaskin's book.
Yes.
And read that, and that was it for me. That was my main sort of practice sort of for preparing for the home birth, was her 2 books and her little short film that she has as well. And I didn't really read much after that. It was just those 2 books, and I'd say that got us basically to your course, and then after your course, we knew that's all we needed, really. her work, I think, just really hit home with, like you were saying, that undisturbed birth. And a lot of the stories, although a lot of them, they're old school and stuff, I think just a lot of them are home birth related, and talking about some of those things that I had big fears around, what happens if this happens, what about if this happens? I think her books covered a lot of that stuff, and so it really helped get rid of those fears for me.
Yeah.
And your course I think was probably really pivotal for my partner. He got so much out of it for, I think, even just when you were sort of saying the partners could write these things down. These are really important for, things that you can do and things that you might need to bring and I think he realized his list was nothing compared to the person sitting next to him, because he started to realize that, at home, we've got that at home, or we don't have to worry about having that particular conversation, because we're at home. And I think he started to realize how sort of easy in a way that we had it. And that really helped him.
Yeah.
And then for me, I think when you spoke about the hormones, I think as a midwife, you learn all these things, but they were so far gone and so far at the back of my mind. And that just stuck out to me. It just reminded me, you've got these things, and they can help you with your pain relief. And, and that, I think that for me was one of the best parts of caring for the home birth.
Wow. It really shifted your mindset. Isn't it interesting? As a midwife who knows all about those hormones, but to put it in the context of how they actually can influence the way a woman feels, the way a woman experiences her sensations, the way a woman can overcome the birth process with the support of these performance-enhancing hormones. It puts it in the context of real life, rather than just being, this is this hormone and it does this on the body, and it brings it into context of the bigger picture. Is that what you felt?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things people would ask when they say, like, where are you having your baby? And I'd say, I'm going to have a home birth. And they'd say, can you have the gas at home? Can you have the epidural at home? And I said, those, I've got my own. They're inbuilt. And they just looked at me like I was just strange one. I said, no, it's going to be orgasmic, and I've got everything I need. And even during the labour and birth, my partner said to me, is this orgasmic? I said, it's not really, but we were able to joke about it and laugh. And that was those good laughs, like it may not have been the orgasmic birth that we joked about, but, those hormones were there. And I think I was even thinking about them during the labour and birth. I was thinking, I've got a break right now, and that's because of this hormone, and getting beautiful. But
you can appreciate the beauty of Mother Nature's blueprint. It's amazing, and we don't talk in those terms. We talk in terms of you're going to need the epidural, but actually sometimes epidurals can play a good role, an important role, but most of the time we don't need it, because we've got drugs. People don't tell you that. And the interesting thing about what you're saying with orgasmic birth is the hormone that makes those contractions happen is oxytocin, and the hormone of orgasm is oxytocin. So when you have high levels of oxytocin and you're feeling loved, which is what the oxytocin hormone is, it's called the love hormone. And so when women feel loved in labour and well supported and safe, then she's peaking and maximising her capacity to access the hormone of oxytocin. And if she happens to have an orgasm, well, isn't that a bonus, hey?
And it's funny you mentioned that I was sort of just ticking past my due date, and we had a lot on our plate at the time, and my partner was busy with work, and he was saying, if you can just wait just another week, if you can just wait another week. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. And I thought every night I was like, getting a bit over this, cuddle up to him, and he'd roll over the other way, starts, heavily breathing like he was snoring. And I'm going, he's just, he's not interested in coming near me. He knows about these hormones. And of course, the night that he decided, okay, I've got nothing on this weekend, and now's the time if baby wants to come. And
Yeah.
he, cuddly and intimate, and the love was there, and my waters broke that night, and
Oh, there you go.
and my labour started that night. So I think,
Oh, isn't that funny?
that was
Oh
a good way to
gosh.
kick off that those hormones are there, and that important role that they have to play, especially
Yeah.
that oxytocin and that love hormone.
Well done. So he probably thinks, well, I did that.
Yes, I do think he thinks that.
So tell us about your birth, Emily. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was I was 40 plus 3. So that was, I guess, one of the other things I was worried about with a home birth was, would I go overdue, and how overdue would I, want myself to go. But 40 plus 3, which was perfect. And as I said, had a nice night together, had some acupuncture that day, and wouldn't have been none the wiser going to bed thinking anything was going to happen. And woke up at, I think, about 1 a.m, woke up to a bit of a cramp and thought, oh, that was a bit spicy. Sort of rolled over, and I remembered my midwife joking about, because I thought, oh, I haven't actually put any sheets down if my waters break in my bed or anything. And she said, most women will get up and go to the toilet, and that's when it'll happen. And I thought, oh, that was a bit of a spicy contraction. I'll pop up and go to the toilet, and lo and behold, my waters broke. So
Wow.
first contraction and waters broke at about 1 a.m. And I went to the bathroom, and sort of the waters kept coming out, and it was very funny. Justin was asleep in bed, and next minute I hear him say, "That doesn't sound like wee." Like, no, I think my waters are broken. And he comes running in and so excited. And he's like, oh, great, what are we going to do now? And I said, we're going to go back to bed.
Yeah.
In a way, because I think we were both really prepared for it to be this really big, long haul, and, first baby, and could take some time. And so we, got back into bed, and I said, I'll wake you up when it's time, or if I need you. And he said, okay. And so I put on your recordings and was listening to your recordings, and just getting into that good headspace, and trying to get myself to go back to sleep because I was so excited.
Yeah.
And couldn't. So things started to get a bit stronger, hopped up and walked around the house a bit and rocked in the rocking chair, and things happened really quickly. So by 3 a.m, I woke Justin up because things were getting quite close. And because we were in a rental, we didn't actually have anything set up because the house had been on the market. So people had been doing open homes. So I didn't want to have a birth pool in the living room for the open homes. I think I was more worried about making sure we could get the space right. So I said to Justin, even if things fizzle, I just want to have everything set up. And he said, okay, no worries. And I had a spa set up out the back, which was just from Bunnings, and we had been using that just as a general spa that we'd taken around house to house with us. And I thought that might be really good for early labour because it keeps hot, and we wouldn't use up all the hot water because it was an older house that we were in. So we were a bit mindful that we might run out of hot water. So sent Justin out there to set some fairy lights up around that, and I hung some stuff up inside and got the birth pool ready inside because that's where we sort of planned to have baby, and messaged the midwife saying my waters are broken, but nothing, it was all okay, and I didn't need them just yet, and I'd talk to them in the morning because that's when I thought we'd be seeing them next. And at about 4 a.m, I just had this overwhelming sense of, if this is how intense it is now, how am I going to do this for much longer? And it's funny looking back at it as a midwife, I think that was probably the time when I was actually transitioning. So I think things were happening really quickly because that was the point where I felt like I was losing it and I couldn't do it anymore. And
so that was only a few hours in, Emily. You probably wouldn't have imagined that you could be that dilated so quickly.
No, and I had one of the things, I guess, being a midwife, I had thought, would I want vaginal examinations to see where things were up to? Will I know those stages of labour really well and be going, oh no, it's still early, or but I just went into my pregnant woman brain. So the midwife friend did sort of disappear a little bit, but he popped back up a few times in the labour. So definitely that was the first point where I thought, I don't know if I can do this much longer. I've only been doing it for 5 minutes, and it's getting big now. And sort of was on the floor in the lounge room with my partner and said to him, look, I think I need to call the midwives. And he said, oh, it's a bit early, and I don't want to wake them up for nothing type thing. And I said, oh yeah, you're right. And so one of the midwives in particular, she was sort of there as our second midwife, the one that had lent me the Ina May Gaskin books. She just, the part of the reason I wanted her there was because I knew she would have a way of, she sort of has her oils and her salt lamps, and I just knew she would come into the space and would help me get through that next part. So I said, why don't we just call her, and she can rub some oils on my back and she can get me through that next bit. And he said, okay. So I sent her a message and she was on her way, and I think she arrived close to 5 a.m. And just before she arrived, I thought to myself, I do think I need the other midwife. And I said that to Justin, and he said, are you sure? Like, it is early, and you've got one coming. Do you need the other one just yet? And I said, yep, it's time. And so he called her, and at this point I thought it just felt big, and I just needed lots of people around me. And I sort of knew that going into the labour and birth, I thought I'd want a lot of people around me.
Yeah.
Just to keep me sort of distracted and in the right headspace. And I knew from my pregnancy that she did that for me. So I thought, it was time for her to come. And then we had to consider the photographer as well. So we were just navigating people at that point. And
tell me, what were you doing? Well, 2 questions. What were you doing to support yourself to experience comfort? How did you find comfort?
At that point, I think just having Justin there, really. Like, we just were close. He stayed close by. I think he was outside initially setting up the fairy lights and sort of could hear what was going on inside, and thought, I think the place that I need to be is inside, and these fairy lights can wait. And the room was really dark because it was still dark outside, so it was really low lit. We just had some little fairy light sort of candles on, and that felt comfortable at that stage. So I just had my head on Justin's lap, had the candles going, I had some music playing, and just sort of tried to keep it really familiar and all those sensations low, rather than bright lights and all that stuff. So just try to keep it slow and low at that stage.
Are you aware of doing anything special or particular with your mind?
No, I think in that moment, the biggest thing that I wanted to focus on was breathing. So I just knew how important it was for the breath. So I think that's what I was focusing on the most, was the breath. And I also suppose, like in the Ina May Gaskin books, and after your course, we joked a lot about having this orgasmic, fun birth where we could laugh. And I also sort of said to Justin, we make out and we can cuddle, and he thought, oh God, that's a bit weird, but whatever. And
if I have to.
I don't know if I do that, so I think just that closeness and keeping it really lighthearted. So Justin and I still, in those moments, especially those early moments, we still joked and laughed, and I was mindful of that. Ina
May Gaskin's book has a lot of people pashing and nipple really stimulation
and pashes, and going for a walk in the forest. I said to Justin, because we had a park near our house, and we'll go for a walk through the trees and we can pash. And I think that was bonkers, but we joked about it. But that was a really big part of the start of that early stages of labour.
And what do you recall your sensations feeling like? Can you describe what they were and potentially how they changed?
I I certainly say when I explain it to people, I'm really mindful of my language, because you so often hear painful, but I wouldn't even describe them as painful. I describe them as just big. So I felt
Big.
everything felt big and heavy. So I found I knew I'd want to be upright and active and bending over, but I found they just brought me to my knees every time, like crashing
Right.
down to my knees every time. And as I said, I thought I wanted to breathe and really focus on that breathing, but in fact, that sort of primal instinctual sort of thing took over, and I was a lot more vocal, and
Wow.
I was really quite loud, which I never had imagined that I would be, but it just sort of felt like it just wanted to come out of me. So
Right.
those that is what I remember most, is just like a big heaviness and just sort of letting it come out of me, being loud. And
Yeah, the vocalization and the sounds. We can hear sounds in that women make in labour, and we can interpret those according to our frame of reference, and we can, make judgments like, oh, that looks hard, or that must be awful, and she could be having a great time. Is that what you experienced with the vocalization, or what?
yeah, I think it was really great, having the birth, not only the photos, but I had video as well. And actually,
Mm,
where I thought, oh, I was pretty cool, calm, and collected at that point, looking back and seeing and hearing, I think hearing in my voice
yeah,
how big it was, I thought, oh, I didn't realize that's where I was in that moment.
yeah,
Or that's how big it was for me. It didn't feel that way. Like it felt heavy, felt hard, but
mm,
it didn't feel the way that it sounds and the way that it looks in the video. So
yeah. That's such an interesting observation. I remember we watched my third birth, was the first time I'd videoed it, and the first time I'd seen myself in labour. And I said to my husband, oh my gosh, I was loud. And he said, you were always loud. Apparently I was for the whole lot of them.
yeah,
So, and it was completely unaware really of the sounds or just how loud I was.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah. So that I would recommend that to everyone. Get
Yeah.
the video, get a video, because just yeah, you think one thing, but in fact, seeing it's a really different thing.
Yeah, and it is beautiful for women to go back and see themselves in labour. It can be quite an interesting experience to see how powerful women do look in labour, and to see yourself in that situation.
Yeah, and I'll sort of mention it a bit later, but there was some sort of postpartum things that came up, and actually being able to go back and look through that footage and go, oh, that actually happened, or I said this, or that really helped with how I was able to look after myself postpartum,
Yeah.
get back into
Ah.
a good headspace as well. So yeah.
Well, just tell us quickly about that. What was it about seeing yourself in labour that supported you to heal postnatally?
So I had a bigger tear,
Mm-hmm.
and I think especially as a midwife, I thought, okay, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this, and I'll have no tear, or it'll just be a really small one. And so I did question myself a lot. What did I do
Mm.
wrong, and what did what could we have done differently? And I remember it being like this. And in fact, going back and watching the video, I went, oh no, we were doing this and I was in this position, and oh, that's really interesting. I actually said this. And there was a point where I'd said, like, baby feels stuck. And so a few things that sort of helped me to understand what happened in that moment. And
Yeah.
I think especially for future pregnancies, to be able to look at it and go, okay, that was just in that moment, that baby. And there's nothing that
Mm.
we would have done differently. I think it was a lot
Yeah.
of what could we have done differently. So yeah, that really helped.
Yeah. We can fall into the trap of feeling like we can control everything, especially with all of our knowledge and understanding. But sometimes things like that happen. Well, share with us the second stage. How was that?
Yeah, so I think it was around 5 a.m. that the first midwife showed up, and she said, what are you feeling like? What do you want to do at this stage? Do you want to try the shower? Or I said, I really want to hop in the spa out the back. I really want to use the hot water. And she said, well, why don't you? And I said, I'm being really quite vocal, and I'm a bit mindful of the neighbours and the fact that it's 5 a.m. She just said to me, stuff them, let's do it. And Justin's like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, okay. So yeah, got into the spa out the back, and it was it was perfect. I'm really glad that was the decision we made, because I knew I wanted to be outside, and I knew I wanted to be in the warm water, and it was dark. The fairy lights were going. It was raining, and we had a little cover over the spa, so it was just beautiful. And just as I was hopping into the spa, the other midwife showed up, and we called the birth photographer at that stage, and yeah, hopped into the spa, and things did slow down a bit when I hopped into the spa, and that midwife brain kicked back into gear, because if you hop into the water and it's too early, everything will stop, and it did. And I thought, oh, it's just early labor, and it's too soon to be hopping into the water, and I've called all these people here. So I did get back into my head a bit, but it was actually a really nice break. And again, looking back at the video and all that, I think, oh, that was just that rest and recover that my body needed before it was time to have baby. So things slowed down a little bit, but within the hour, I started to get the urge to push, and so that's 1 a.m. water's breaking, and sort of the urge to push at about 5:30, 6 a.m. And again, I questioned it. I said, I don't think it's time. And the midwife said, do you want to have a feel? And I thought, oh, yeah, I could do that. So I just put my finger inside, and I could feel the head there. And I was like, oh, wow, it's time, and it's happened. And so that was a really special moment as a midwife. I think being able to, feel your own baby. And then the pushing stage did take a little bit longer for me. So started to push sort of on and off from about 5:30, 6 a.m. But the contractions were quite far apart at that stage. So maybe 1 or 2 every 10 minutes. So but it was really lovely looking back in the moment, and looking back, the contraction would finish, and we'd stop, we'd all talk, we'd have a laugh, we'd eat fruit salad. The dogs were there, so the dogs would come over and say hello, and they'd have a pat, and it was really beautiful. Although at the time it felt really frustrating, because I just thought, I just want to meet this baby. I think it was a really big part of why it was such a lovely labor and birth, because I had that really nice time in between to stop and catch my breath, and talk to my people, and give Justin a kiss. And although not the big open mouth kiss that I was hoping for,
the big pash,
no big pashes, but got to have those moments. And then she felt like she was a little bit stuck in the end. Yeah. But again, looking back, she came out fairly quickly at about 7:40 in the morning. Beautiful. In the water, the sun was coming up, the birds were chirping. It was like, I can't describe it enough to people. Like, it was just perfect. And I think at one point Justin said, oh, should we move back inside? The sun's coming up and the neighbours are going to be waking up in a minute. And there was a few big contractions at the start when I was in the spa that I was quite vocal with, and so I think he was a bit mindful of how vocal I might be with pushing the baby out, and having the neighbours pop their head over the fence to make sure everything was okay. But in fact, with the pushing and stuff, I was not as vocal. So I said to him, no way, like, we're staying out here, this is perfect. So and then I had sort of prepared him for quite a long third stage for the placenta. I'd said to him, it takes some time, and we'll move out of the water and do a breastfeed and go to the toilet, and then it'll probably come out. But sort of surprised everyone as I hopped up out of the spa. It fell out, and the midwife promptly grabbed the water bowl from the dog, tossed the water out, and caught it in the dog's water bowl. So that was comical.
These are the things that home birth has to be clever at. You use what's around.
Wrapped and overcome. So I've got these beautiful images of me walking inside with placenta between my legs in a dog bowl, all wrapped up in a towel. But yeah, it was perfect.
I have to ask the question, Emily, how did the neighbours go? Were they aware of what was going on?
So because it was a rental, we didn't know them well. We knew one set next to us. We'd sort of talked to them a few times, and we came out one day of the house to go for a walk with the baby, and they said, "Oh my goodness, you've had a baby? We didn't realise you were even pregnant." And I said, "Yeah." And Justin said, "Oh, thank goodness. Does that mean you didn't hear her giving birth?" And they said, "No, we didn't hear a thing." And he said, "Oh, great," because it was in the backyard and it was a bit noisy. And I said, "No, we slept through all of it." And no one came knocking, no one popped their head over the fence. So I'm assuming everyone was sound asleep while it was happening.
Oh, it's funny. When I had my third son, and it was a home birth, we ran out of hot water. So Peter's knocking on the back neighbour's door saying, "Do you mind if we hook this hose up to your hot water system?"
Yeah, the things that you have to think about, I think, going into a home birth versus a hospital birth. It wasn't, what am I going to pack to take to the hospital? It was, okay, I need to get a hose fitting. I need to get an urn to keep the water hot. I need to We actually had to get in and put some timber under the floor in the kitchen where we were going to have the birth pool, because we had to make sure it would support the weight of the birth pool. And
see, all those things. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And so you had your little girl, little Aurora, beautiful name. How was that once you met her? What was that like for you and your partner?
It just, I think I just get that big flood of oxytocin when I remember looking at him, because we were both convinced it was a boy. And I was, he's a manly man that likes to do all the boy things, and I was a bit worried about how he would react with the girl, and what that would be like for him at that time. And in fact, he was just over the moon, and you could just see in his face just that instant love, and just seeing him turn into a dad in that moment. And initially I think it was big and heavy, and I had just had my eyes closed, and then you can see in the footage, and I do remember just looking up at him, and we laughed that it was a girl after we had a look together. And it just felt right, just felt like it had always been. There was it took a little bit of getting used to that it was a girl, but she just felt like a part of them, like she'd been there forever.
Isn't that interesting? Wow.
Yeah.
And then afterwards you had a bit of a tear. How were they able to manage that?
Yeah, so initially we did think that it was smaller than what it was. So we went inside and had lots of really beautiful skin to skin and breastfeeding. And once we sort of had done all that, we did some suturing. And so we just sutured on the couch, which is, like going into a home birth, I always knew that if I did have a tear, you're not in a hospital bed, you don't have stirrups. But I also understood that most tears just needed to come together really basically, and then they would do the rest. So it was difficult suturing on my particular couch that I had, but they just a bit of local anaesthetic in the area, and they did the suturing then and there, which was really nice at the time, because it just meant, especially for Justin, I thought those first hours after birth were really important for him to bond with baby. So it was really special that we could just be on the couch. It was a rainy day, and we just felt like we're in the biggest love bubble, and it was really, really special. But they did the suturing there, and then it wasn't until later on down the track it got a bit infected, and we went to hospital and had it all checked out, and found that it was bigger than we thought, which just, I think now, able to say it now, but just appreciating that the body at the time obviously realised that yes, it's sutured, but there's something missing here, and I'm not going to heal because it's not, it's not quite right. And
Yeah.
that prompted us to go in and get it checked. And it was a few people that looked at it and thought it was fine. And it wasn't until we went to went to operating theatre and had good lighting and good anaesthetic and stuff that we found that it was a bit bigger. So yeah, I think
did that take the shine off it, off your experience?
It did a little bit. I think I was really thankful. In fact, I think people might call me crazy, but I was actually really thankful that we sutured it at home at the time, and we thought that it was smaller, because it meant that we had about a week at home where we were just in this love bubble, and we just got to breastfeed and bond with her and cuddle with her, and it wasn't interrupted. So I think if we had known at the time that it was bigger and had to make that decision to transfer to hospital, I think that would have ruined that really special time that we had.
That
so
part of it, in
hindsight, I'm quite happy that it did happen the way that it did, because we, got to fix it, and we got to, do all the things that we needed to do, and still didn't have to interrupt that space. But it was hard going into the hospital, definitely. I think having a really beautiful home birth experience and avoiding intervention, avoiding epidural, avoiding antibiotics, to then go into hospital and have to have a spinal, antibiotics, a catheter, it's just the total opposite side of everything that we had hoped to avoid. But I also knew that going into a home birth, that sometimes, some things are necessary. Like you said, sometimes women need that epidural, sometimes women. So for me, I didn't need it for labour and birth, but I needed it after. And, I'm okay with that now. But it was tough at the time. Definitely, with all the hormones and milk coming in, and it was a tough pill to swallow initially.
You're dealing with so much, aren't you? And I think a lot of people don't realise there's so much you can handle at home that you don't have to transfer for. But with any home birth, you always have to be prepared to transfer if the woman needs a bit of extra help. But it's interesting how you've realised that you wouldn't change that first week, and the way you were able to retain and remain in that love bubble straight after the birth. That's lovely. What did you learn about yourself, Em?
I sort of was thinking about this for a while before, we got together, and I definitely think I surprised myself with how strong I am as a woman. I think I already thought, I'm pretty tough, and, but getting closer and closer to the labour and birth, it did come into question a few times with how would I do at home, and how would I do at home without the medications, without the drugs, and all the things that I had seen women use. And, I did question that. And so I think I learnt that I am really strong and really powerful. And I think as well, just that mind space as well. I've never been one to think a lot about getting myself in the right headspace or working towards getting yourself in the right headspace. But I'm really proud of the way that I was able to go, okay, this is what I need to do, this is what I need to read, these are the people I need to surround myself with, because that headspace is really important. So I learned a lot about sort of that mental side of it for me as well. I think as a midwife, I've learned more for myself than anything. I think just how labour and birth can be really normal, and with the right people and with the right amount of those good hormones, it can happen in a really normal, easy, fun way. So I think probably learnt more about myself as a midwife than I did as a pregnant labouring woman.
And I guess learning to trust the process, it's a difficult thing for us to do because we're so used to controlling the process. But to trust the process takes on a whole new level, particularly when you're talking home birth, because that's true trust. That's trusting that it's a normal physiological event, and we're hoping not to need any extra help. But of course, you always have to be ready to transfer if you do, but still trusting that, no, women can do this. And that's not a message we hear a lot.
No, I think being able to let go of control as well a bit. So
Mm,
I was pretty proud of myself for that. I think as a midwife, I was really mindful of not being in that midwife brain, and it popped up a few times. Definitely,
yeah,
I look back and watch the videos, and you hear me use some of my midwifery terminology. But I was really proud that I was able to let go of it and
yeah,
be the woman and not be the midwife
yeah.
for most of it.
Nice. And being the woman and the mother is going to have a huge impact on you as the midwife.
Yeah, that's what I was saying recently
Yeah.
to friends. Even just this postpartum journey, more than anything, I've learned so
Mm,
much that I think will change my practice. So
yeah,
it's been
that's
amazing.
amazing. And what would you tell a pregnant woman?
I think what would I tell every woman? I just shouted it from the rooftops. I think being really well educated and really well informed. I
Mm,
reading good material and listening to podcasts. I did a lot of listening to podcasts, and I'm still listening to them now. I've just continued to just dive into all things, labor and birth. And um, I think sometimes we, not just in pregnancy and labor and birth, but I'm realizing now medically as well, we're so quick to rely on other people for our health. And we've got Google, and you go to the doctors and you say, I've got a sore foot. But knowing yourself really well, and then knowing what's important to you, and going in, I think, to pregnancy, labor, birth, but also the postpartum period, and knowing what's important to you and being really, really well researched on those things
mm,
would be my biggest advice that I would give, because
mm.
it's so easy to say whatever you recommend, or I'll do, and in that moment when you're feeling, big, strong pain, tired, it's really easy to say, "Oh, whatever you think is fine, let's just do that." Or
Mm,
being, especially I suppose home birth's different, but in this, like, knowing as a midwife, I suppose I thought, if they said to me if I had to transfer, and I, you know, would I want this? Would I want that? I think knowing what I would want and being really well educated on those things is really important for women,
yeah, yeah,
um, because knowledge is power. And I think feeling really confident and comfortable with um, the processes and
mm,
the machines that they use and the stages of labour and every facet of
yeah,
pregnancy and birth and babies
yeah,
is really powerful.
yeah.
Which I
I I would absolutely agree with that. I think your story is a powerful reminder of how normal birth can be, how we can trust the process. But your reflections on the preparation of reading material like Ina May Gaskin's book, which helps to normalise the ideas around birth, helped you to understand, and under what conditions you might need this or this, and to sort of get clear in your mind, and to take that level of responsibility around your own experience, your choices, surrounding yourself by the right people. And obviously home birth midwives are typically very amazing women because they're choosing to work outside the system. So they have to be brave, and they have to trust the process, and they have to be skilled as well, because women do need help in birth at times, and being able to suture you at home, and everything that came with that experience was just so rich and wonderful for you to be able to remain in that space. So your preparation got you in the right mindset, got your partner on board, and helped him to understand the role that he played. It's a beautiful story also, Emily, of working with your capacity to work with the bigness of those sensations that you describe, the way you were able to look for comfort and know what your body needed, and to respond to that with sounds and breathing and all of those tools that you described, and then needing to have a bit of help to heal a week after the birth, after your suturing, and to have to go back into hospital once again would teach you to appreciate the beautiful things that the system offers us, whilst at the same time making wonderful use of being able to utilise health professionals to have your baby at home. It's a beautiful, inspiring story. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we'll use this story to inspire other women and also to open people's minds about the choice of home birth. I think COVID was a classic time where people started to see that as safer than being in hospitals because of the COVID. But the home birth rates did go up during that time, which is a wonderful thing. And we do need home birth as an option for women, because it really does show how birth, when it's undisturbed, and we create the perfect conditions for these babies to be born into the world, that most of the time it goes really well. And then sometimes we need to transfer. Yeah, no,
I think the biggest thing that I can say is just watching it all unfold as it should, amazing.
Beautiful.
You hear about it, read about it, and to be able to experience it was just the best thing ever.
I'm so happy for you. That's beautiful. Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in again this week, and we will have another story for you next week. Thanks again. Bye.